Okay, so first of all, refining your cylinder. So a lot of you have really nice looking cylinders, but now is the time to check and make sure that the rim looks good. And let's see, I've got my sponge. This is a very important thing. So you should all be looking up here. Okay, one thing I need you to do, if you haven't done this already, I've talked about this with some people, is you're gonna kind of like bend the sponge like this, kind of in like a U shape, and you want to run that over the rim so that it's not squared off. So if you can see this rim here, it's not like up, across, and down. It's kind of smooth. So I want you to like go over the rim so that you don't have sharp edges, and instead you kind of have like a rounded top. You can also kind of compress on the sides so that it thins it out if you feel like you need to do that. But you want to make sure to go over the rim with a sponge that just has a little bit of water, just enough to kind of float over the surface, but not enough to really wet down the surface. Okay, and that's one thing. The next thing is inside, this inside joint right here. What I need everyone to make sure that you've done, the part where inside the base meets the bottom of the cylinder, what you need to do, get a good brush, is with a brush, get a little slipper, a little water on it, and make sure you have compressed inside that seam just by going around a few times in that base. You want to make sure that it looks seamless. You don't want to see that line. You want to be able to kind of have a fluid side of the wall going into the bottom of the cup. So use your brush and kind of now I've got to go and kind of use my brush to smooth out some of the lines I just made. But you want to compress that seam by kind of just pressing and running a brush inside there. Okay, and then another thing for refining your cylinder. If you have any extra on your where you made your base, has anyone ever had a piece that was glazed and the glaze ran down a little bit and you got like a little chunk on this corner that like broke off? Okay, so if you look up here, see how this sidewall is very straight down and then the bottom is really straight across. Everyone see that? I don't want that, because the more right angle that edge is, the more likely you might have what's called pitting, where you might break. There might be little chunks, even if there's not glaze there, that little edge is in danger of sticking. So you want to first of all trim any extra. So I have a little extra right here. So I'm going to trim that down. I'm just going to slice it off so that it's not so much extra. And then here's what I'm going to do. This is a watch it, because I don't know if I can adequately explain it. I am going to roll the edge around like this. I'm pressing it against the table or whatever. It's really fun to do this on a banding wheel. And so what happens is you get a little bit of a lift right there and a little bit of like a lip. That lip kind of stops the glaze, but also that lift means it's not just a straight right angle against the kiln shelf. And that's just a small thing you can do to help. So if anybody needs to see what that looks like up close, you can see my example. And then with a very just wet enough to float over the surface, but doesn't have a lot of moisture in it sponge. It's a long description. I'm going to go back over that and kind of smooth out any lines there. So I just want that bottom edge to kind of be like, again, visual. I want it to be flat, and then I want it to kind of have a little bit of an angle, and then the sides. That's what we want to do. So you can do that a couple of times. Just use your table to roll that around. And if you want to smooth that lip down a little bit more, you can. Like sometimes it creates like a little lip right there. If you don't like the look of that, you can smooth that down more. But it's a really small thing to do, but it prevents a big problem. And I've seen that happen. Last year we had that problem a lot, and I just want to avoid it. And I found that this one little thing just solves that problem. Also, when you do that, go back in and look in that interior seam one more time, because sometimes it creates like a little gap. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to just go back over that interior seam one more. So that is just smoothing out your surface. If you have any bumps, take that barely wet sponge and smooth over it. You know, you're not adding a ton of water. You're just smoothing it out. But that refining stage is really important. And I think that sometimes we skip over it because we're worried more about construction. But refining the surface is really important because once it's fired, if you have any little like nurbles or weird spots, it just shows up 1,000 times more. So take your time always to like refine that cylinder and make it look really good. And then your next step will be to wrap this up really good because you're not going to add a handle until maybe tomorrow. So you don't want this to dry out because it needs to be needs to still be plastic enough to accept joining a handle. All right, I'm going to stop that. That is refining your cylinder.